Hey, what's up, everybody? This is GameLogic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube and here on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. And we're back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast. Tonight is the GX Show, episode number 216, the GX Show Part 2 for October 2021. And here with me, I have my stalwart hosts of the Co., that being co-host, Mr. DBqHams. How are you doing, DBQ?
I'm glad to be host of the Co. Yes, I'm doing just fine. I have been walking around a lot today, experiencing the new Pikmin Bloom. I can't quite call it a game, but it is my if Pokemon Go was too active for you, and you like Nintendo franchises, yeah. Maybe this is something. I don't know. We'll see how many times it drains my battery. But yes, I am here. And if you see me shaking my hand or getting up and moving during the podcast, it's only because I'm trying to hatch something. So,
well, I've been spending lots of time walking around also, but we'll talk about that later on this evening. SwissGuard, my other co-host, how are you doing?
All right. I went to the dentist today.
I thought there was going to be a story about that. Like, all right, I went to the dentist today. Hold on.
No.
But that's just it, period.
Yeah, I went to the dentist.
Okay. Well, perhaps not as invigorating as walking around, but there it is. Hey, let's get started with tonight. At the top of the order, we're going to be talking about our new releases, which would be inclusive of our Pix Plays assignment, if applicable. It does not... well... Was your Pix Plays assignment, DBQ?
It might be our transition. It was not my Pix Plays assignment, but it certainly could fit with it.
Okay, and my pick could easily pick with it as well because we had a horror-themed Pix Plays assignment, but I will talk about that section when we get to it. For now, we're starting off at the top of the order with our new releases. I have recently been playing Death Stranding, the director's cut on the PlayStation 5. This is, it's in the new release section because it released last month. I think it's just been out just over a month, so that still qualifies. So again, Death Stranding Director's Cut. Give me just one second.
So, as he's talking, did you play the original? Swiss, you played the original, didn't you?
Yeah, I liked it. So, yeah. I kind of fell off of it, but I've been meaning to get back to it.
Well, I didn't even remember you playing the original. So it's about how long did you put it? Because it's supposed to be about a 33-hour long game. Do you know roughly whereabouts you fell off?
I mean, I probably was at 10 to 15 hours in, but I was also, I couldn't bear to leave one area without maximizing the network. So, I was spending more time just kind of wandering around grinding, so to speak, than progressing through the story. So
I guess the first thing to kind of start off talking about this title is it a game? And I've been on record several times as saying I'm not super happy, or at least there needs to be a recognition of when a game is not like a gamey game. And the interesting thing about Death Stranding is I feel like, and we had a lot of conversation in the lead up, we didn't know what the game was, we weren't sure how the game was being messaged, it was a whole Kojima thing about, kind of veiling it and shrouding the thing in mystery. And the truth of the matter is, it's a very gamey game. There are tons of similarities to mechanics in other games that I find appealing. Lots of similarities to Splinter Cell, Mech Warrior style games, even to a certain extent, Sid Meier's Pirates, when you really think about the inventory management and weight loading meta, because it's very similar to you figuring out how many goods you're going to put in your cargo hold on your ship versus how many weapons and cannons you're going to carry. The similarities to Splinter Cell are invoked where, I'm just starting to get into the combat sections now, and there's an incredibly satisfying stealth mechanic where when you initially get into it and you don't have weapons, there's still this takedown mechanic where you can sneak up behind a mule and then bind them. And it's incredibly satisfying because there's a big tactical ballet to it where you do your early warning system and blast that out, and you can see where you believe the mules are. I still feel compelled to go get an actual visual confirmation sighting that that's where they actually are, so that's part of the meta. And then you proceed to sneak up on them. You use the terrain and you use cover so that you can't be spotted as you're approaching them. And then the whole time you're approaching them, in very similar to Splinter Cell fashion, you're like, is this guy going to turn around on his patrol path just as I'm walking up behind him? So you're anxious and super tense. Then you get up behind them, and then hopefully you're able to do the stealth maneuver takedown on them before they notice you. There was an instance where, and a lot of times you see them pop on the early warning screen, but you can't necessarily tell. You don't know what their patrol path is for certain, and you don't know exactly how they are painted against the terrain. You don't know if they're patrolling in front of a rock outcropping or if they're behind it, if you're going to have that as concealment. And so the first mule that I took down was relatively easy. It was relatively straightforward. There was a big rock in between he and I. But then the second one, the guy was running a patrol path behind the rock, but the rock was at an elevation up above me. So I had to figure out, do I quietly climb this rock? Do I pop over the rock and grab him just as I come over the top? Or do I go all the way around the rock and approach him? But in which case, I don't know if his patrol path comes right at me and puts me in his visual line. Again, a Metal Gear Solid kind of tactical problem. And then the third mule that I took down, I thought, as I approached him, he was going to be somebody else out in the open. He was sitting down on the other side of a tent that had multiple openings in the tent. So I had to figure out how to traverse right around the perimeter of the tent, cross the holes where he could potentially see through, see if he was like looking around like some characters do when they're sitting on something, right? And then figure out how to stealthily approach. The other thing, then I combine that with the Far Cry aspect. You guys have heard me talk a lot about Far Cry 5 and how one of the things that I love is I love that taking a knee, right? And kind of drawing the op plan in the dirt, right? And that's kind of what it is here. You get up to an encampment. It's, there's landscape, there's terrain, there's the mule disposition, there's spread out, there's all types of objects and other things in between. And you go through this, pre-assault, old day Rainbow Six kind of methodology in your head where you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, which mule am I going to take out first? Which mule do I take out so that the other two don't see me, etc. All of this, and then and that's the combat-oriented part of it. Then again, there's the weight loading meta, where you're trying to figure out what do I carry, what do I pick up. When you open, a post mailbox, what in there is of value? There's your mission critical things that you have to get, and then there's a lot of optional things that you want to get. Do you get the thing that's going to contribute most to your crafting when you get it back to a Bridges outpost, or do you pick up the lost cargo that somebody has left behind to claim the rewards and the likes and the popularity for that? And so you go through that as well. And then you load all this gear, you put it on, typically what I do is I put it on any kind of which way that I can, and then I just use the auto optimize load, right? And then as you put these pieces of load on, just like you would kind of in a manage, like you have to manage. It's analogous to managing heat in a MechWarrior game, but depending on where you put the load, you have to understand how that's going to impact your traversing the terrain. You can carry a lot of weight, but that makes you easily subject to tipping over. But maybe most importantly, because there's a way to prevent tip over, which is just you hold the cinches on your backpack, the shoulder straps as a cinch on your backpack, and you just walk around like that the whole time, and then you don't really have to worry about tipping over. But you still have to worry about going up and down elevation, and the more weight you carry, if you do a large drop, that becomes a problem. Your cargo gets damaged. People will leave ropes for you, though, that help you traverse. So I hadn't been using the rope mechanic a lot before, but I used, there were a couple of ropes that people had left, but then I put down one myself and used that to scale vertically down a landscape feature in order to access land, further down below. Then there's the kind of social aspects to it, like you think about and consider how helpful are you going to be or how helpful are you not going to be. You have to use materials that you find to craft things like climbing stakes. And so the question is, when you put down a rope and you use it, do you leave it behind for the next person, or do you take it and keep it? And so there's that aspect. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been kind of waiting for you to get into the social aspect, because I actually think that it promotes altruism in that you aren't competing with other people. You can just assist them or not. And because it's, you're just getting random. I mean, you're essentially getting randos when it comes to what things have helped, because how many millions of people have traversed the first little creek, right? So there's probably a bajillion bridges on that creek. So you get a subset. So you don't really have to feel terribly guilty about not leaving one. The only drawback is, okay, if I leave it and it's in a good spot, I'll get some likes, because you can't thumbs down somebody for leaving a bridge, but you can thumbs up. So then you sign into the game and it's like, oh wow, look at all these people that gave me a thumbs up for this thing. So and I remember Kojima talking about this, like that was a goal of his, which is, it's a very strange way of doing it. By decreasing the social interaction, you increase the social conscience is not the right word. By decreasing the social interactions, you're decreasing the toxicity, but also making the social aspect more appealing. So it's a weird paradox. But that's cool. Have you gotten to the point where you've had like the weather affect you or not? Like the rain?
Yep, I have.
Okay.
And what that does, at least for me, what I've experienced from it so far, is it just compels you to sometimes shorten your route, sometimes take risks, right? Because the way I think about it, I don't know if it's valid, but the way that I think about it is, the less optimal the route, the less likely I am to run into BTs. Going the ways that seem entirely convenient is probably a likely way to run into BTs. Avoid, and people help out because they put warning signs up, right, that BTs are in the area. So I tend to kind of mentally overlay, right, where I need to go. I mentally overlay an eastern, a central, and a western path, and I tend to vary, right, which of those three that I'm going to take. But once I'm on a path, I tend to not deviate, except when I run into weather, because that will sometimes make me go, I need to figure out a shorter path, right, or right, alter, what my plan was.
The weather damages your pack. Like, it's corrosive. So you can't just go through the game moving an inch at a time, cinching yourself. There's some, in addition to the BTs and sometimes the mules, the weather itself forces the player to be a little bit more aggressive from time to time.
Right, absolutely. And the thing that I was going to mention when you were going through the social aspects, right, the thing that's neat about the social aspect is the way it's laid out, just like you said, right, there's no requirement for you to participate in that. And that's a huge thing that was left out of the dialogue, right? It was painted as if, I don't know that it was painted that it was essential to your success in the game, but it definitely wasn't painted as if it was something that you could avoid and not participate in. And so it's a very federated approach to social interaction where you can choose to not participate in the federation, right? And because that wasn't conveyed, and I'm going to swing back and talk about that a lot, it created some confused messaging for the game. I think the last thing I'll say is maybe the thing that I just mentioned right before that, which is another thing that really hooks me in this game, is that navigation aspect. We had the Pix Plays a few weeks ago where I'd asked, hey, pick a game that, has a map meta, right, and navigation meta to it. And you get this a little bit in Elder Scrolls Skyrim as well. You can kind of look around on the map and see where you choose to go and choose what path by which you want to go. You can choose a path that avoids things or choose a path that forces interaction with things along the way. There's there's the Division 2 is kind of the same way. You look out on the map, you can determine if you're going to go if you're going to have waypoints like at a safe house that allows you to re-equip and rearm, and so you get a lot of the same effect here in Death Stranding, where you take down jobs off a job board again, so you get a little bit of like the Witcher 3 and Borderlands kind of effect in there, with there are multiple things up on a job board that you can choose to participate in and choose which ones are most beneficial to you. And then you can choose, you can actually map waypoints on a map and determine how best you want to get there. Sometimes those routes are given to you. Sometimes you just create them on your own.
You literally are experiencing the traveling salesman problem in computer science. So.
Right, and so my last bit on this game is that, what I've been writing about earlier this week is that the problem with this game when it originally landed is just how it was messaged and how it was conveyed, which is that it was presented as this Oscar season, right, kind of game that was only suitable for gaming connoisseurs of particularly sophisticated taste. And there are elements of that maybe that's true that you need to experience, but it's also not an absolute necessity, right? There are more approachable gaming mechanics that make this game super interesting for anyone that likes anything from Mech Warrior to Need for Speed to Far Cry to The Division, right? It's chock full of those types of things. I don't know that there was anything really presented or really talked about at any volume about the combat that was in the game. Very little about like the stealth mechanics, again, that are similar to Splinter Cell. And I'm like, this was just a hugely missed opportunity to me because it was marketed as if the only people it would appeal to were the type of people who would like a Detroit Become Human or a Heavy Rain. And I'm like, that's a piece of what this game is, maybe to maximize your appreciation of it, but it's not what you have to get in the door. And even when you get to the cutscenes and the cinematics component of it, those are not as egregious as even a previous Metal Gear Solid game, right? The cutscenes are early on.
There's a pretty high bar. So,
well, I think that's what you guys were. I think when I first had it, you guys asked me how it went or something, or maybe I posted like within 5 minutes. I'm like, hey, I'm 5 minutes into the game and I'm not watching a cutscene. Like I'm actually playing the game. Yeah, I definitely feel like on the spectrum of like pure action game to art house fare, it's not near the Journey end. And I did not like Journey at all, but I appreciate where this game falls in. Like you said, it's got those game mechanics. I will say it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'd be afraid to say it would appeal to everybody. You may find something that resonates with you, but there'll be stuff I think for some people that it's just too much to get over. But I happen to like Kojima's games and the quirkiness that he infuses in them. So, and this one, I whenever I play a game like that, like a Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever, I always tend to skew towards the stealth style way of attacking problems. So this one fits right into that. So I'm very glad that I was surprised. I'm surprised that you've been so enthusiastic about it, and it's making me happy. And I'm gonna have to get back into the game again.
Yep, that's good to hear. DBQ, I am equally as interested to hear about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, I wish I could tell you more. Like I actually had the game and could play it, but no, I only played the cloud demo version on Switch. In part because I don't own the game yet. After all the kind of dialogue around it this week, in terms of it, I wanted to get a little taste of it, and the demo did that. But it also, I've never tried cloud on Switch yet, so it was kind of a combination of being able to do both of those things. The interesting thing is that the cloud is like a one and done. Like you get a demo, it's a cross section, it kind of drops you into some navigation and some combat. It's not like just the start of the game until you hit a certain time period. So it is, but then once you've played it, you can't go back to it. Basically, it's there to tell you, yep, does this work for your system or not? Which makes total sense. Like if it was too much of a demo, that could be just enough. Cloud-wise, performance-wise, I noticed a little bit of loading in. I noticed some blurry, kind of a little bit of smear, the grease smear aspect of not having a kind of crisp resolution. The kind of the skyboxes and the landscape definitely make me want to play it on a 4K TV. But in terms of the actual game, it plays out kind of like what everybody's been talking about in terms of the combat is, I played a cross section. I played a little bit. I get a chance to kind of feel what that kind of gun combat is like with Star-Lord, and the ability to call in other teammates, other guardians into kind of the combat flow and have them do some of their powers. It was enjoyable in the way of if you have having an appreciation for the characters goes a long way, right? Like, the combat itself is not anything revolutionary. It is third person gun combat. The ability to kind of bring in your different teammates does add some things. In the demo, there wasn't a whole lot of complexity into that, so I don't know how much that gets, as I've read about it and listened to it, you have the ability to kind of chain combos together with, Drax and Gamora and having multiple attacks kind of chain on top of each other. The exploration, it feels good. I mean, it feels like a good third person kind of adventure action game. Again, not doing anything amazing, but also by the sheer fact that it's doing something acceptable, it puts it above Marvel's Avengers. And I say this as somebody who really liked the story in Marvel's Avengers, and to the point where I've gone back and started it on Series X again now that it's out on Game Pass. But the rest of the gameplay was just kind of button mashy. Here, the fact that it is a little more combo-y with the different characters is something that you didn't necessarily get in Marvel's Avengers. The fact that there's a lot of dialogue going on is a piece of atmosphere and characterization that would have been great in Marvel's Avengers. That having kind of, as you're moving around, there's a lot of conversation going on in the background, between all the Guardians. Well, I mean, except for Groot, because there's only so much conversation you can have with Groot. But that in itself it kept me engaged, and I could see where, as a fan of the franchise, I would want to experience the game just for kind of that aspect alone. Like, I would, so I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for it. I'm not going to be picking it up on cloud for the multiple reasons, but I know that given Square's history of sales around holiday times, like, if I can pick this up for $50, I'll probably get some good satisfaction out of it.
So, incredibly high bar set for voice acting this year when you talk about Deathloop, Death Stranding itself in terms of the director's cut. How's the voice acting in this? I mean, the appeal of this, the voice acting, and really the chemistry between the voice actors feels like an essential component of weaving this together in a gameplay and, cutscene kind of fabric. So, how is that in the game so far?
Okay, so,
or in the demo, I should say.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to. The short answer is, I'm really enjoying it, and it's satisfying. It's well done. The longer answer is, if you can treat this as a comic book property where multiple versions of characters can exist, there's a lot to like within these characterizations. Like, this is not 2015, 2016 Guardians of the Galaxy comic, although there's some of that there. There's definitely some of Peter Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, but it leans in that direction with some of the snarkiness of it, and humor, but it's, if you can hold the ability to not compare the two, it's just fine, right? Like, if you're thinking, oh, well, this is trying to be this, or if it's trying to be its own thing, it does it well. I think one of the things, I haven't looked up how the recording was done, but it does feel like it is edited together in such a way that the timing of the conversations feels natural for people people kind of roaming around crazy outer space. But it feels like it's a group that's coexisting in a same space, rather than somebody talks, There's a break as the next person talks. There's a break as the next person talks. Like there is a back and forth that's going on. So in terms of the voice direction, I would say it's, from what I've seen so far, really solid.
So the dialogue sounds a little bit more like a song, which is often done today with even in collaboration with the singers in booths on opposite ends of the country, than voice actors in booths on opposite ends of the country cut together with big gaps and pauses in between the handoffs.
Yes, and given the AAA status of this, an audio production designer should be able to do that. But it certainly, it definitely feels like a song. How about that? And not a screech or a scream or a wail as I'm giving myself my own transition into my next game. So, but any other Guardians of the Galaxy questions? Are either of you guys thinking of picking it up, looking at picking it up?
It's within the radar. Yeah, it's in the radar sweep.
I would say the same for me. I think it'd be nice PS5 pickup.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yep, very much so. So my wailing and screaming game is Back 4 Blood. So GameLogIQ and I and Towmaster played a little bit of Back 4 Blood, the open beta, last month. I've been playing with another friend through the last 2 weeks or so, and enjoying it. I mean, I think if you liked Left 4 Dead, this is more of it, right? It's good. It's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. I haven't played Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2 in probably 8 years. So I don't have a long, it's been a while. So I don't feel like it's a fresh memory for me. And so that's enjoyable. It looks nice. It runs nice. I've been playing it both on PC and Xbox Series X. It looks great on the X and it runs super smooth, but I can't beat the beauty of a headshot on mouse and keyboard. So, there is something to that simplicity, and that is, it's fun. It's simple. I mean, the levels get a little more complex as we've gotten into like Act 2 and things like that. I've played both with just 2 human players and some bots. I've played with all 4 human players, played with some randoms. The randomness of things can be a little more hectic in terms of is people's connections, like we saw in the beta, that still kind of exists in terms of everybody loading in. But it works out. I mean, I think the other challenge sometimes with randoms is the pacing of the gunfights and how much people want to push forward or how much people want to hold back and kind of clear an area. And that push-pull can get you into some sticky situations if you end up getting separated and not being able to revive somebody. Having the ability to, the revive ability has been nice, that if you kind of bleed out, you'll get kind of caught up in some goop and be able to kind of pull somebody out of it, which is nice. The limited continues definitely leans this in the roguelite aspect of things. Like, you are making runs through the story. You are encouraged to run multiple times, because the more that you run things, the more skill points or gear score that you're going to have to be able to unlock additional cards. And that deck building piece is really kind of the new piece in this model of Left 4 Dead, is the ability to craft a deck. Your starter deck is really just a starter deck. And as soon as we got through kind of the first run, being able to add some in and specialize and pick, are you going to, I went for the healer class and specializations around that and cards around that. My friend World Voyager went for the stamina, because the ability to sprint, it certainly makes a difference in some of those levels as you're trying to get to certain objectives or get past things. And so being able to spec around that and buy some of those skill cards during the rounds, but also unlock those cards outside of in kind of the larger metagame aspect of that, I don't know that I've unlocked enough cards to feel like it's made a substantial difference, but I can see the trajectory for it is that if you kind of looking at what the end of that kind of gear unlock your pass for your skill points, that if you get to the end of that, there's some nice perks there, and so there's a reason to kind of keep grinding, keep going through some of those runs, even. And I haven't even touched the mode with, I've only done campaign, right? I haven't even touched the mode where there is a director or somebody. That other aspect of the cards is that the director aspect in Left 4 Dead, has the ability of placing down, putting your zombies in different spots, different types of zombies, but that player also has cards as well, and so they can be playing kind of zombie cards to change and create some modifiers, and you as the player then also have the ability to kind of build your deck around some of those modifiers. So there's a lot of depth there if you engage in it. I think the question will be to what degree people to engage with it, and I'm very thankful that it was on my radar anyways. And also now having it be a Game Pass game makes it really easy to put it on a lot of people's radar, because it is. I don't feel bad if I jump in, once or twice a week. I don't have to kind of feel like I'm churning through it. I can dip in and out because it's part of Game Pass.
Well, maybe next week we'll have a conversation about concurrent player numbers and the comment I made a couple of weeks ago, which is about that, the real proof in the pudding with these games is their longevity, right? And, it's very difficult. I've seen a lot of things about Back 4 Blood player numbers, and I'm like, it's been the first couple of weeks of release. We're not really going to... It's the 2-month point that I feel like is really the right place to take the pulse. But what I wanted to mention was, a few weeks ago, we had a conversation about Overwatch, and we talked about how I think Tao was playing it, and he was mentioning how he got into the match style where it gates it does matchmaking based on what classes people are playing. You pick your character
class. Yep.
Yeah, so that you can get a forced intermix to teams. What is the aspect of that in Back 4 Blood where you're in with a bunch of randos and everybody's picking a DPS or DPS equivalent?
So I think the benefit of the card system means that the character subset is less important. That there is a single perk that is available with each character, and the character may start off with a different type of weapon, but they can all equip anything. So there's 4 starting characters. As you go through and get through the camp, the opening act of the campaign, it opens up and introduces you to the other 4 characters. You can't have duplicate characters in runs. So if somebody does take, and this happened to us, we had started it with Walker and Mom, and as we jumped in with other actual players, somebody else grabbed one of our players that we had been playing. But because you're building the deck before you go in, or you're building a number of different decks that you can then select at the start of a game, you could build a stamina deck, a DPS deck, a healer deck. And so that even if you end up with a character who may not be your main in a Overwatch sense, the differentiation is not significant enough that it needs to dictate your play style, that they are more skins on a character with one special skill than they are anything else, because it really matters more about the deck you bring in, because that's going to give you your 20% more stamina, or your 10% more health, or your melee kills generate health. Those types of things are coming from the cards, which in some ways solves that problem of having to play a role, because you don't have to necessarily. You could keep going with DPS and have everybody be DPS, or having the ability to be multiple decks means that you can kind of choose and select that on the fly.
Yeah, it's analogous to the comment I made a few weeks ago about Call of Duty, right? That one of the things I found appealing was that Call of Duty allows you to kind of build and configure your class, and so that's not dictated to you, and it sounds like you can do the same thing here, which also answers one of my problems that I've had, which is, do the decks matter? Well, they matter if you basically treat the decks as the manner by which you're going to build a class, because then your character selection becomes less important. So, still not convinced. I gotta wait to hear more, but very interesting and kind of promising to hear about from that aspect. Swiss, did you have any questions you needed to get out in on Back 4 Blood?
Nope.
So nothing that DBQ mentioned convinces you to get into that end of the pool?
Probably not. It's just like I'm not like a big zombies game guy, so.
I'll say, like, there have been times when I've walked away after a play session and thought, I really am interested what the, now I can't think of what that name is, but the one that's going to be set in a spaceship with aliens. Like, it's coming out, it was announced during E3. It's another Game Pass one. I'll have to look it up as we go. But, yes, I think the loop of the gameplay is fun. I could also see the diversity of aliens in it, and not just like aliens, Fireteam Elite aliens, but kind of having a creative diversity it could be interesting. Could be, the enemy types could make it more interesting, because there are parallels between the enemy types here than as in Left 4 Dead. They're a little different, the visual styles are a little different, but they're still similar types. And yeah, if zombies don't, if you have an aversion to zombies, then yeah, there's only so much of this that you could take. But at the same time, the gameplay of it has been something that's been very enjoyable.
Well, the closing question I had for you was, now you also played Aliens Fireteam Elite?
Yes. Yep.
And I wanted to kind of get your impressions on, like, obviously a couple weeks ago, the article about their player numbers having fallen off was kind of put in the wind. So is this a game that you expect to still be dipping into a couple of months from now? Does it have any type of persistence hook where you're going to keep coming back to it on a more regular, frequent basis, or do you see it something like you'll dip in and play a couple of times a month? And will you do the same with Aliens Fireteam, or will that gameplay, your participation in that be even less frequent?
So the level design is more enjoyable here. The level diversity is a little more enjoyable. I mean, in Aliens Fireteam Elite, as you go through the game, you do get off spaceships, you get into land, but yes, Aliens Fireteam Elite is a $20 game. It's a lot of fun if you have some friends who like the franchise. Back 4 Blood feels like a AAA game. There's a lot more polish on it. There's a lot more depth to it. And the card system also means that yeah, one of the other games I've been playing is a demo for an early access card battler game. And it, the card aspect of this gives me something, just like the unlocks in Call of Duty or something else. Like, there is something here that gives you the ability to work toward, but also because of the different skill sets and the cards that you could build, it also gives you ability to kind of customize it a little bit too. So yes, I would say I will be dipping back into this because my multiplayer games are probably, cooperative. This and Destiny, when Halo comes out, there is no co-op at launch. So, a multiplayer, a PvP multiplayer experience is different than what Back 4 Blood offers. So I think it provides another kind of something to round out my gaming portfolio for the week type of thing.
Very cool. Well, that game crept into the edge of the spooky, but we had an assignment to more specifically go directly at the spooky. If you're not familiar with the show's format, what we do is at the end of the GX shows, we give ourselves an assignment, referred to as the Picks Plays assignment. That is what each co-host is supposed to go off and do for the 2 weeks intervening, and then come back and report their findings and the results of their homework. The assignment that we've had for the last 2 weeks is as follows. Well, it seems like Epic Games is getting in on the Halloween spirit by giving away Stubbs the Zombie for free. And there are plenty of other free scary games out there if you want to keep your jump scares short and not too high, and at not too high a graphical fidelity. And if you want to support your developer with cold, scary cash, just about every gaming outlet in all 9 planes of you-know-what is having a sale on spooky titles. So whether it is something in your backlog or one of these cheapies or freebies, get ready for All Hallows Eve by playing something that evokes that none-too-comfortable feeling of fear. Have fun with the assignment as always, and don't feel obligated to stay strictly inside the horror genre, as long as you can rationalize your pick. Swiss, starting off with you, the question is your pick in the horror genre?
Horror? I don't know. Is Ghostbusters horror? But it's spooky. So I think Luigi's Mansion 3 is like a completely legitimate pick for the spirit of the assignment. So yeah, this is like kind of cutesy horror, I guess you could say, like little kids scary. But it's you know, it feels more like they took a Halloween party and mashed it into a game. Like that's how the aesthetics are. But yeah, so Luigi's Mansion, it's for me it's kind of there's some things I really like about it and some things that it's just, you know, it's not going to rise to the level of other Nintendo franchises for me. On the one hand, it does feel different than, like, it's just not like a skinned over Mario, certainly. This is the first time I played a Luigi's Mansion franchise game. You know, you have the hotel in this case, and there's some cool Art Nouveau, you know, Art Deco type aesthetics and whatnot. And Luigi has to go explore the hotel and make his way through to rescue his friends. You know, as you go through the hotel, like it's a little bit old school in that, you know, you go into a room and then it's just that room. You're not like, it doesn't feel like an open world. It feels like you're moving from block to block on a map. And which is kind of neat. Like I like how they have all the there's little things you can always do in the area, and, you know, little puzzles. Once you have like Gooigi, you know, there'll be a grate and you can drop them to the grate, or you have to do a certain thing with your whatever poltergust, whatever they call it, vacuum Ghostbusters gun. And you know, it's fun. One of the drawbacks is it's still a game for kids, and I'll get into a new area and I want to explore and see what kind of little Easter eggs that the developers have put in there. And then Professor E. Gadd shows up and is like, Luigi, I told you to go find the elevator. We go to the elevator now so we can get a move on. And it's like, dude, I just got here. I want to take a look at the shops and see if I can find anything. And, you know, the thing keeps popping up telling me to get to the next boss battle or whatever it is. So it kind of pushes you along a fairly linear path. So, but once you kind of get to an area and get past the EGAD, whatever they have to do, and are able to actually explore, I've enjoyed it. There's lots of fun. I like the combat, which was surprising to me. Like, I didn't know that there'd be much in the way of combat in this game, but actually battling the ghosts is fun. You get like, you know, you have to basically freeze them with your flashlight, and then you suck them with your vacuum, and they try to escape. And then you got a little Hulk with Loki and first Avengers movie kind of smashing them back and forth across the floor. And so it's kind of neat. It's you know, it has that Nintendo charm, which is good. But in some ways, I feel compelled in the game. I feel like it's a little bit too aggressively trying to push me down the path rather than just letting me experience it. And I guess the reason is that usually you need to hit some trigger before like the level exploration is even really feasible to a certain extent to accomplish anything. And maybe they're just like trying to get you to at least get that trigger, and then you're released. But so I understand it, but it still like is a little disjointed to me.
So your horror is Nintendo's hand-holding game design. That is your horror game.
I suppose. But it's got the Halloween aesthetics, and my kids can watch me play it. So,
Yeah, it's full stop. I mean, it's within the, spiritual boundaries of the assignment. One of my questions is, so we've talked on this show about mostly Nintendo games, but maybe this notion is applicable to others, about this notion of finding the whimsy, right? Letting your hair down and relaxing enough to allow yourself to kind of participate in some of these frameworks. But it sounds like, I feel like you, as a gamer, have a good sense of, finding the whimsy. But what is it about this game that's like cutting that across that threshold? I mean, I know you mentioned the dynamic where that is the symptom, but is there something greater behind your inability to kind of enjoy kind of some of the childish, not meant in a derogatory term, but childish, whimsical nature of it, like I experienced when I played, Yoshi's Crafted World, that's breaking that paradigm for you?
I don't know. I just don't like it hounding me. But the whimsy of the game, like, I mean, I think that's pervasive. That's a strength to me. Just like, Luigi finds like a key, and he does a little dance that he found the key or something. Or there was I did a boss battle, and it's after I got Luigi, who can access areas Luigi can't, because he can kind of like sift through like grates and bars and stuff. So in this particular one, you have to fight the entire battle as Luigi, and he defeats the boss. And then Luigi gets all happy, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it!" And like literally, he was just like standing on the side in a catatonic state because you were Luigi at the time. So like just little in jokes like that. They have some nice like throwbacks for even the dads and the moms. So it's Professor E guide, like when you're getting your widget to enable you have a map, it's the virtual Boo, and it looks like a virtual boy, and it's all in red line, and it's just like, I mean, yeah, there's a lot in there that you can enjoy. When you messaged me before the show that I was being lazy and I did not update the agenda, I was actually playing Luigi's Mansion because I'm enjoying the assignment. Sometimes I'll get an assignment and I'll put a couple of hours in and I'll be like, okay, that's enough of that. But I want to continue playing this, and I've been pushing myself to play it more. So
now, your wife finished this game, is that right?
Yeah, this is one of her favorite games, which is surprising to me. Like, she's got a weird taste. I don't know. It's like it's hard to predict with her what she'll like, but she does gravitate to the Nintendo franchises, and I think it's she didn't mind the hand holding, and I think she just enjoyed the cuteness factor and the whimsy factor. Yoshi's Crafted World is another one of her favorite games. So if you talk about Nintendo whimsy, maybe that's Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. All of those types of Nintendo, like, we're just going to do our thing type games. So.
Well, very cool. Next up on our rundown is a game that is decidedly not in the same vein as Luigi's Mansion. I went back to Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. The weird thing about this game is, as malleable and flexible as it is, I could probably select it for any Pix Plays assignment that comes across, because it seems like it always has something thrown in there, which really, when you kind of think about it from a business model perspective, really makes it cut a lot closer to Fortnite. We've given Fortnite a lot of credit recently for its access to kind of pop culture content and its manner in which it brings it in. But Cold War also has a fabric that allows it to easily be bent to match a seasonal whim or things of similar ilk. And so what they've done this Halloween, as I mentioned, one of my favorite seasons in Black Ops Cold War was when they brought in Bruce Willis and Rambo, just because of some of the kind of over-the-top 1980s era kind of shticks that allowed for the game. One of the differences, though, is when they did that, I really enjoyed the modes that they brought in that were synonymous with those characters. I really loved the Rambo gunfight mode, and I really loved the, I can't even remember the name of it now, but the, whatever the hyper, team-based modes are, the one that, where, you would explode every, 60 seconds, and that the way you kept your cooldown going was to get kills. I can't remember what the name of that mode is right off the top of my head. But they kept it around for the season afterwards as well because it was so popular. But the modes that they brought in with the Halloween content. And so let me talk about the Halloween content a little bit first. They brought in the ghost face from Scream. So you had people running around in the mask with this really slim body and this really long shirt that goes down below its knees. So it's just very kind of comical, but also creepy in the way that the thing runs around. What's very funny is, as is the case, I don't know why, but with a lot of these characters, a lot of players glom onto these characters and utilize them in specific play methodologies that, enhance their, they choose that time to focus in on things that they need to level up to go along with the character. So you see a lot of these ghost faces running around, and 90% of them seem to be doing melee. So I don't know if that's to flip out their opponent or to somehow create some type of intimidation factor or whatever, but I got very aggravated the multiple matches that I was in, constantly fighting ghost faces who were running around trying to melee you. But the modes that they introduced this time, I just didn't find appealing. There was, again, kind of another kind of imposter mode where two of the players of the group were killers, and so, but you couldn't tell, and and then I think that when it got down to the end of the game, there was some break in the game modality where at that point different players could, I forget what choice they had, but one of their choices was just to stay alive until the end. I'm not sure. At any rate, the whole point is that, as I've mentioned before, I don't play things again, it's another mode that I can't remember because I never play it, but I don't play the modes that are really long and take longer than the 5 or 10 minutes per match, because I like playing the game kind of hopped up on speed and going, full blast, full throttle, full tilt, and then the match is over, and then you reset, and then you have an opportunity to go again, because it gives me the ability to play, 9 matches in a night is kind of normally my my kind of pickup game framework, and then some nights I can play more than that. I didn't find the Halloween modes particularly appealing. The one that I played was really just a cosmetic mode, and so I played Halloween Nuketown. For some reason, in core matches, there were not map rotation mosh pits this season, or at least when I played, there weren't. So when I was playing regular Call of Duty, the modes I had to pick from were really just free for all, team deathmatch, and kill confirmed. Map rotations modes, modalities for mosh pit were in hardcore, and so when I was in hardcore, I was playing Halloween Nuketown. They also did some interesting things. I don't know that they've done it in previous seasons. Again, it doesn't really have to do with the Halloween mode necessarily, but they've implemented domination on gunfight maps, so you get these really small, tight maps with 3 control points on them. And again, the whole thing about the gunfight maps is that it's just complete insanity. There's an engagement going on every 2 seconds, and having domination enabled on those is pretty insane. But I just played the Halloween Nuketown mode for our assignment. Not a huge fan of Halloween. I think, as I've mentioned on the show before, I kind of find it a distraction and an unnecessary thing that I'm happy when it is over. Again, I don't have a lot of use for things that are called holidays, for which I don't get a day off from work. They are just inconveniences. The music in Call of Duty is not the greatest orchestral movement ever created, but it is comfort food. And so right now in the Halloween modes, you get a lot of silence, a lot of background ambient noise, and a lot of weird, goofy carnival-like horror music going on. And I'm I'll be so glad when Halloween season is over. So that was my experience playing the Halloween Nuketown mode. DBQ, you went back. Is this a legacy game? Is this a backwards compatibility game, or is this a more modern iteration of Costume Quest?
Okay, so let me take you on my assignment journey here. So I started off with good intentions of some horror, but I was gonna go like old school kind of campy horror a little bit. So I loaded up Resident Evil Code Veronica. And it's so wonderfully 2000. It is just those computer generated graphics. Oh, yes. But at the same time, I forgot how terrible tank controls were. Oh my gosh. I had to like remap my brain. Like, oh yeah, there was a time when I would play Dino Crisis and Silent Hill and Resident Evil, and I understood how the tank controls worked, and I had to stop using the analog stick and start using the D-pad in order to get back into that swing. But it didn't take very long for me to remember why we've left tank controls in the background, and so set that down. But I wanted to stay on the Resident Evil track, so I went back to a few years ago when we assigned scary games, and Resident Evil 7 in VR is my kind of go-to scary game. And, put it on, played for a little bit, still think that if I was in that case, I would not go into the house, or I would leave the house. Like, why do I have to keep going deeper? Why can't I just leave? But it is one of the games, it's so affecting in VR because that atmosphere is already creepy, and then you put yourself in it where you can look all around, and kind of in looking at VR, PlayStation VR and Resident Evil 7, and then looking at it on like a really nice TV screen or a computer monitor, you notice kind of the screen door, you notice kind of the blurry graphics. But going right from Code Veronica to PlayStation VR, it's like, oh yeah, I can see where there's a legacy of these kind of, a little high res blocky graphics in Resident Evil. But again, it's still affecting. It's still a game where I want to not be standing, or if I'm standing, I want to put my leg up against the couch so I have something to kind of ground me in the real world, and not in the world of Resident Evil 7, which is, it's great game. It is just still a great game, and it's fun to go back to. Playing the DLC is fun and enjoyable as well, where you get Chris Redfield back and it's a little more empowering, so which has been fun to play. There's a little more action there, but still I needed a palate cleanse, and so that's when I came to Double Fine's Costume Quest. So yes, this is a backwards compatibility game. I am always a good sucker for the Paper Mario kind of Mario RPG mechanics of turn-based battles with an action button or a block button. This week, Echo Generation came out on Game Pass, which kind of uses that same mechanic, and it's enjoyable. I played through the demo this summer, and I'm looking forward to kind of diving into that. Iconwell, Bug Fables, I've enjoyed those games. So yeah, Costume Quest plays into that same type of combat in terms of the turn-based style, and it was a nice little 45-minute palate cleanse after being immersed in Resident Evil 7.
So, did you find your time in Costume Quest to enjoyable to the extent that it heavily influenced your action-adventure platformers that you also got into, as we segue over into the regular rundown and round robin?
No, not necessarily. These were ones that my first one here, GB Rober, is one that in the last Steam Next Fest a couple weeks ago, where they had a bunch of indie games that were coming out. This one caught my eye just because of the stylistic aspect of it. It looks like Mega Man, kind of plays like Mega Man, but it looks like I'm playing on a Super Game Boy. It's got kind of 8-bit Game Boy-like graphics, but it's got the palette of Super Game Boy. Kind of those orange and reds on there. It plays out very much like Mega Man, that you're moving from level to level, defeating some bosses, getting their abilities. You climbing vertical ladders, shooting things, jumping. There's a couple nuances that add a little bit to that kind of genre, where you've got almost like a double jump, but it's got like a thruster on the bottom because he's a robot, and so you can attack enemies from below. It's not super complicated. It's made by one guy, and it is very competent, though. It is impressive just as a technical feat that it was created by one person. It's really enjoyable as kind of a retro Game Boy 8-bit type of Mega Man throwback, and it's $7 on Steam. So it was one that I had wish listed and was eager to pick up and happy to pick up for that price point.
Very cool, very cool. Swiss, you played something that was also... all of these games are like 2D side-scrolling games. Is that accurate? Okay.
At least for Heave Ho.
So talk to us about Heave Ho. Is this a game that your whole family got in on?
My son played it after they watched me play, but I actually played it with a friend of mine, Kairos, who's on our Discord actually, and he liked it. So when we had a little gaming session, I picked it up and we played it together. And so this is, it feels very indie. So it's you basically are a head with two arms, and you have to get from point A to point B. So the left trigger grips with your left hand, and the right trigger grips with your right hand. And you can kind of, as you move the controller, like you can point which way your arms kind of go, and then you just kind of grip and use momentum to swing yourself around, like kind of like Tarzan. But it's very silly.
Keep holding down like on the trigger, like a gang beast or like a quap. Okay.
Yeah, when you let go, your hand lets go, and you may drop or something. But so you get from point A to point B, and where the multiplayer comes in, we didn't play competitive. We played co-op, and it's like, we can link together and then kind of swing our way or do what we have to do. There's some collectibles, and we tried to grab them, but I was surprised. Like, it'd take us maybe sometimes 10 minutes to get through a level because we keep dying or falling or whatever. It's got good controls, but just enough squishiness to be like that indie, like a little bit challenging. But we had a grand time, like hanging out for a couple hours playing it. I was surprised how long we stuck with it. But it was good. I think you definitely need to be in the right mindset before you play this game, because it's definitely a game if like you're in a bad mood and you play it, it's gonna just incite more rage. Kairos made a joke about he thinks every couple that's going to get married needs to play Heave Ho together as just like a couples building exercise, and I said that's probably a bad idea. But he and I, like just being buddies, having a good time. We had the whole karma going on there for like the best mentality to fully experience the game. Because if there's gonna be bickering in your relationship, you don't want to play a game like Heave Ho. It will exacerbate it. So, but yeah, it was a good time, and it'd be cool to play with more than 2 people. You can play it with up to 4 people. So, I'm sure I'll be coming back to it, but for like a silly change of pace game, yeah, it was good.
All right, well, very good to hear. I got into Shadow Complex Remastered I'd say it's on the PlayStation 5. It's actually a PlayStation 4 game. It actually just recently became backwards compatible on the PlayStation 5, so I think it was one of the titles that was orphaned in the transition to next gen, and just got its next gen implementation. So this was a game that I can remember passing by when it came out on the PlayStation 4. Just I think at the time I was just kind of not into anything 2D at all. I was probably in that mode where I felt like anything in 2 dimensions instead of 3 dimensions must be by definition inferior to a 3D game. So, but I've relaxed a bit from that point in my life. And so there's a neat little kind of campy narrative behind this, for the damsel in distress who's from your party. And so you are seen going hiking on an early date with this person who you've been dating for a few weeks. Actually, the game opens with you seeing some matters of intrigue back in the D.C. area, Washington, D.C. area, with what looks like some type of agent or covert agent who meets his demise while going up against a criminal organization that is, the quintessential kind of James Bond villain kind of organization. And then you're shown going out on a date, I think somewhere out in the Pacific Northwest, and then she descends down into a cave. You're waiting for her to come back up. You don't hear from her, so you descend down into the cave, and hence starts this adventure when you realize that she has been kidnapped by this evil spy organization. And so it's a 2D game, which I guess the way it plays, it's in that mold of what we would normally call a Metroidvania. And so you play 90% of the game, in 2D, but there are some sequences where then you get some 3-dimensional depth kind of into the screen, and you can move your weapon through those angular spectrums to engage with enemy targets. I want to say there's a game that's leaping to mind that makes it, that reminds me that it has very similar kind of campy dialogue. But it's kind of this battle rhythm of it's 2D, 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 and then you kind of get some fun instances where you are able to engage in more of a 3D realm, 3D type of game. One of the most memorable that comes to the top of my head is you eventually go to a point where you get to a turret, and the game kind of snaps around to 3-dimensional view, and there's enemies like pouring into this room, and for like a full 2 minutes, you're just behind the turret, just kind of mowing targets down. So there's different weapons in the game you find. You start off with, I think, a pistol, and then you get access to like an assault rifle and a submachine gun and things like that. So it's an older game that probably didn't maybe get the praise that it should have gotten, so it's been very enjoyable to get back to it. Quick hardware note, it's also neat to get back to these PlayStation 4 games and remember to pull out your DualShock controller and charge it up and actually still get some use out of it, particularly in games that don't have any DualShock implementation. I think I just realized out of the 4 controllers I had last generation, I think I determined that one of them has given up the ghost and its battery is no longer rechargeable. So, we've officially started the transition to next gen by that
Did
realization.
You play back originally when it was? I mean, this was an Xbox Live game in 2009. So
yeah. So right. So the original Shadow Complex. In fact, this was one of the biggest Xbox Live games because it kind of stretched the envelope of what an Xbox Live game could do. I think this was one of the first ones that where they lifted the size limit.
Yep, it kind of opened up that cap of file size. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So no, I did not. I didn't play the Xbox original, nor did I play the PlayStation 4 remaster. I'm just getting into it now.
Yeah, and I remember, I mean, there was gameplay praise for the original in terms of the Metroidvania aspect of it, and then there was also the controversy around Orson Scott Card as the writer of it and everything else. But yeah, I mean, as a game, as a Metrovania, yeah, there's a lot to like here, regardless of how you feel about other political things around it.
Yeah, I got into it kind of as a warm-up because I thought I was going to be playing Metroid Dread. Which I think, at least for this window of opportunity, I'm bypassing. But but in that vein, it's a good game to get into to kind of prep myself for that other type of engagement.
Yes, and even that lineup of as somebody who's played a little bit of Metroid Dread, and the demo's out there now as well, but I have not played enough to be able to talk about today, so I'll save it for another show. But yeah, that line of sight of your of your gun, right, that you get in Shadow Complex definitely comes back into play here in Metroid Dread 2.
Very cool. Very cool. DBQ, you want to tell us about Dire Vengeance on PC?
Sure. So this one again is in that very indie realm. It's made by two guys. It is two guys, and one guy did this, and a third person did the soundtrack. Soundtrack's kind of like a heavy metal soundtrack. It works really well. This looks like if game development. It's a very high res version of coming right off of Metroidvania. This is perfect. That if Igarashi never took Castlevania in the Metroid style and never went that the Metroidvania route, if they stayed in kind of the Castlevania 1, Castlevania 3 kind of action game, Super Castlevania, this is the type of game that would come out of that this feels very much in that very straightforward. Yes, there's some hidden passages and walls, but it is an action game through and through. It's a, it's got some pretty graphics, but it plays like Castlevania 3. It plays like, actually kind of like Ninja Gaiden. The jump feature, very similar to Ninja Gaiden in terms of if you jump and then move, you'll stay kind of upright as your character, but if you push the direction and jump, then you'll do the spinning jump like you used to do in the original Ninja Gaiden. So that impacts your traversal. You have the ability to do you can jump and then do the spinning jump to get some extra space, or to spin back around to catch a platform. And this game is punishing. I mean, this is like if the video game market of 1990 continued as well. Like, they created things so that you couldn't beat it in a rento period. It's a lot of fun, but wow. I mean, I've looking at the developers and hearing some of the things they've put out there, like that's their inspiration. Like, they are taking kind of the hard action, kind of classic 8-bit, 16-bit action games of Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, rightfully so, and throwing it in kind of the blender of kind of heavy metal and gothic architecture, and this comes out of it. It's a whole lot of fun. I just wish I was better at it, because I've only gotten to the second level, and but it's enjoyable in that, like, if this was an arcade game, or if this was something I would have rented from a video store, I would have a lot of fun with it. I'm still having a lot of fun with it. It's $20, I think, at a sale at 15 to 10. It's a whole lot of fun.
How'd you discover this? Because it just came out like 2 weeks ago.
Yes, it really just came out. Same thing with GB Rober, but that one there was a demo. This was simply when I looked to see when GB Rober was coming up, that this was in like the upcoming list, like 2 down from it, and so I was like, oh, what else is coming out? And it was simply my mouse hovered over it enough to see that it was a 2D platformer, and I went, oh, okay, I can look at this. So yes, it was totally by happenstance, but really enjoying it. I mean, it is. I'm surprised at how much fun I'm having, even if it's frustrating. But it very much, and in some ways, one of the two developers, has done other game development and kind of broke off on his own, and so it's very competent. There's a whole power-up system that, if this game had checkpoints or a more forgiving save system and a tutorial, I could see it getting a whole lot more traction. That the sheer, like, kind of masochistic, difficulty of it makes it difficult, makes it hard to recommend. But there's a power-up system where you've got speed and power, like attack power or jump distance. You have magic attacks just like you would in Castlevania, where you're throwing. It plays out very much like your special abilities in classic Castlevanias. Like you got something that is like an axe or a boomerang, or the monk woman, the gypsy in Castlevania 3 that kind of shoots out 3 glowing orbs from her cloak as a special attack. There's something similar to that. And then there's a whole bunch that are totally different and unique and kind of fun to play around with. But all of those, like, as you're gaining power-ups, you're filling up this longer bar across the bottom of the screen. And you can choose to kind of cash out. Like the first one is speed, the second one is power, the third one is jump, magic, and life. And you can cash out at any point in time. If you die, you lose all that progression. So there is this kind of risk reward of like, I found a secret spot and it gave me a whole bunch and I got to life. And so I could boost my life. But the next time I played through it, I tried a different route and didn't go to that. And by the time I got to the boss, I only had enough to boost power. Or I kept it all, but then died. And so I lost it. And so there's a lot of depth here, but there's no explanation for it, right? There's no tutorial. There's nothing. I've only learned about that from going online and kind of trying to figure out what all this means. But as somebody who enjoys 2D platformers, who's somebody who has, grown up playing these types of games, there's a lot of fun to be had. It's a game that I know I'm going to keep coming back to and kind of playing it in like half-hour bursts. Like, okay, I'll play around. And the nice thing is, like, once you finish a level, the level select allows you to start at the level that you haven't beat. So like, I don't have to start at the first level and continue to work my way up kind of Castlevania 1 style. Like I can, once I've unlocked the second or the third level, I can just start there and keep going. So I can incrementally, it's a lot of memorization because it is kind of getting those specific timing patterns down too.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Let's go on to a game that doesn't throw that kind of difficulty curve at you to the point of frustration, and more so, I feel like maneuvers you into a very zen-like space. And when I'm talking about mini motorways on the PC, this is a game that came out for iOS originally. I think
Apple
it's
Arcade,
available. Yep. It's in Apple Arcade. Okay.
Yep. Because that's where I sunk lots of hours into it. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Very cool. So it is now available on PC. I think it came out earlier this year, maybe over the summer, June, July. And so this is kind of it's a city building game, I guess, is kind of the way I would think about it from a genre perspective. It's hyper focused on the subset of city building that is laying down roadways and managing traffic. And so you go through it runs in real time, so it's very kind of SimCity like, which is good in a world in which the SimCity property never made it back out of its glory days of Sim 3, because whatever SimCity that came out in 2011, 2013 or whatever was a abject failure that EA was never able to correct. And so you start off with a very small grid, usually I think about like a 7x13 grid, 7x7 grid, and it lays down buildings, it lays down, factories or whatever, places where people would normally commute to, and then it starts laying down houses. And then you have to interconnect the houses with the factories or stores or whatever you want to imagine that they are, with roadway, and then pins start generating at these larger buildings. And the whole objective of the game is to constantly route enough traffic in high enough volume and with great enough frequency to all of kind of the commercial buildings to prevent a buildup of pins at any one location. Because once it fills up with pins, your game is over. Your session is over. And so for a progression path, it lays down, I think the version I have has like 10 kind of cities and towns. So you get LA, you get one Chinese town, I think you get a Japanese town, or kind of the first three. And then maybe there's like a German one. But you basically have to capture 300 pins, and then that contributes to your next unlock. you get an additional achievement when you hit 1,000 pins. So I think I'm working on like the third map. I think I've gotten 1,000 pins once. And then in most cases, I'm able to hit the unlocks to go on to the next map. And so, and in between, as this progressing through its real time kind of turns, I think there's a turn at every. And so there's an accelerated clock that runs, and basically it's at the end of the week. So from Monday through Sunday, this impending danger builds up, and you're constantly expending roadway tiles and other level ups, kind of as ammunition, basically. And then on Sunday night, Monday morning, you get replenished, and you get an option to choose from different packages for your next refresh. And so some of the power ups that are available are bridges, because there are waterways in the town, in all of these towns, and I think there are bridges, roundabouts, traffic lights. And I think there's one other
bypasses. You can get like a highway bypass.
Yep. They call them motorways, but they're essentially bypasses. And so you'll have instances where in these towns, these commercial buildings and the houses are color coded, and so blue houses release blue cars, and the blue cars are the ones that can go to the blue commercial buildings to take pins. And so you may get a cluster of houses in high density in, say, the lower left-hand corner of the map, but the blue factory is in the upper right-hand corner of the map. And so what you have to do is, what's prudent for you to do is, rather than have them drive through all the roadways to get over there and then wind up, building up pins at high density and your session being over because you lose the game, you want to build a bypass to go from that high-density area over to the other. And then you're then just routinely monitoring different convergences of tiles on the map to see where you have a high traffic problem. And then those are areas where you want to lay down a roundabout or a set of traffic lights or a series of traffic lights. And so it exercises all those muscles of like a city builder, which to me is kind of one or two steps down from a 4X game in terms of the degree, depth of strategy that you're trying to apply. But it's got some neat ambient noise, some neat music. It is very much kind of in the same kind of art style as Art of Rally, kind of that more simplified art style that's pleasing and easy to look at. And so I mentioned, like I said, that it's kind of the zen of it all, and so it's kind of like a match 3 kind of card game where, yes, there are periods, there are times of high degrees of panic and anxiety as traffic starts to build up or pin density starts to build up, and you're frantically trying to figure out, what do I need to do about it? Can I make it till Sunday, right, where I'm going to get something replenished? And then sometimes, and then on those Sundays when you get replenished, you're given a choice between two different replenishment types. They're not always what you may tactically need at that specific time, and you may be forced to kind of wait it out and just try and survive for the following week. So I've had a good time playing on that. Again, it's the type of game that you're like, do I really need like my RTX 2070 card with its 8 gigabytes of GDDR5, right? Like, and so you question yourself for that. And I was really this game was on my playlist, but I was really going to bypass it for that reason. But I was like, no, there's really not any great strategy games otherwise out that are maybe arguably better than this, so let me give this a whirl. And I've had a really great time.
Did you play Minimoto, the one before, the subway building one?
No, I did not. I heard that was good as well, though.
Yeah, I've played both. I like the newer one. I like Motorways much better. And maybe it's just the fluidity of kind of road building versus subway building. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's light strategy. And sometimes you're right. You don't get what you need, and you can anticipate your run being over.
So did you play before or after they put traffic lights into the game?
Ooh, I played it it launched with Apple Arcade, I think. So I played it early, and then I came back to it later, and there were traffic lights. So I've played both times.
Yeah, very cool. And then the other thing I've been getting into is a legacy game, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This is one of those games that was so hyped when it came out that I just felt it was too good to be true. Believe that it was the echo chamber and a lot of the self-fulfilling prophecy of games that we quite often see as we saw in the run-up to Cyberpunk. But this was a game, but I do like PC ports that go to the Nintendo Switch. And so I finally picked this back up on the Nintendo Switch. I had played maybe the first hour of it and gotten through, like, the assault on the prison where you were being held and your first interaction with the dragon. But nothing in that session really, like, jumped up and grabbed me. I have had, now that the game has opened up, I have had an absolutely incredible time. There is a very strong argument that after another couple toe dips into this thing, it may supplant Max Payne as my favorite game of all time. One of the things that I thought about when this game came out was I just never, going back to even Morrowind when I tried it, I never thought it was really feasible for a first-person view game to effectively do melee combat in any way that didn't feel clunky and just completely based on luck. But this game does. It does melee combat incredibly well. It has a combat style that allows you to kind of feel the timing and the impact of making a mistake when you choose an inopportune time to make a swing. It has fatalities in it when you land a critical hit blow on an enemy. It has great ambient background noise. It has great kind of pathfinding in dungeons. It hits that navigation meta where you can see that there are places to go, but you can see that there's a mountain in between you and where you need to go, and you make that decision to just follow the roadways all the way around or try and surmount the mountain. Things are nested in places on the map, and you're like unsure of what the exact path to get to that thing is. Sometimes when you're in a dungeon, it overstays its welcome just a few iterations too long. Several times I've been in a dungeon like I'm just ready for like this quest to be over, and you'll find out that like, oh no, there's like 2 more chambers you have to go through. But the other thing I really love about the game is it is a game that I think way back in the day I talked about Dungeon Siege on this game, but it's one of those games where the more you use a thing, that's how you level up, and that is just particularly amazing. And it breaks one of the paradigms of that Advanced Dungeons and Dragons used to have, which used to drive me thoroughly nuts, which is that it used to prevent you from using certain things depending on what class you were. And I've never understood that particular rule set. May he rest in peace, Gary Gygax, but like I never understood that. But this alleviates that so you can be a magic user and you can wield a sword. And in BioShock fashion, you can wield a one-handed melee weapon in one hand and arm a spell in the other one, which makes an incredibly potent combat combination that, again, is akin to BioShock. But in BioShock, one of the constraints was you could only have so many plasmids armed, and you would only have an option to then equip one or two, one of 2 at a time. But this one just gives you your full array of spells for you to go through and choose as you see fit for any given tactical combination. So pretty awesome. And then of course you get shouts, when you engage dragons. There are townships, lots of characters, a pretty rich tapestry of background. The world starts to feel lived in. It doesn't feel like that up front, but eventually you see more and more townsfolk and NPCs and stuff in the environment. Pretty amazing. And again, I love the notion of the Switch, this little $2.99 console that enables you to experience games like that. Again, this is an older game. It's still incredibly neat that it's on something like the Nintendo Switch, and you can play it at home or you can pick it up and play on the go.
Well, the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim Anniversary Edition is coming out November 11th.
My interest is definitely there. I'm having this experience on the Nintendo Switch, and I'm like, man, I'm pretty sure I have this on at least one much more advanced hardware platform. I bet it would be pretty fun there too. But I'm fine playing it on the Switch for now because I need to get some use out of the Switch. Trying to have this relationship with some of my hardware that's not used and trying to find some things that I love, utilizing them for. This is one of them. But yes, eventually I am interested in swinging back and trying this out on PC or Xbox Series S or PlayStation 5. So DBQ, you want to take us out talking about Henchman Story?
Sure. So this was another one that popped up in the Steam's Next Fest. I've never played a visual novel before, I think. Well, I mean, other than like Phoenix Wright, but there's a little more to that. This is completely just a visual novel, but I lost 5 days to it. Like 5 nights of play sessions, right? That's not actually 5 days worth of. It's about. I spent 10 hours in the game. There's 12 different endings. I think I've seen 7 or 8 of them. It's middle school DBQ loved choose your own adventure books, right? And this is that in spades. The voice acting is solid. This was a Kickstarter game last year. It's got some voice talent from other games, nobody big titles, but people that have had character roles in a number of other games. And so it's a talented voice cast, and the writing it's tongue in cheek enough. It starts off very kind of sarcastic and parody of comic book and superheroes and villains, and you are a henchman. You are the kind of toss away henchman, or one of the many henchmen for the bad guy, or one of the bad guys in the story, who is just kind of an idiot and is kind of the one who always gets defeated bad guy in a cartoon. And then you end up, there's a bad guy buyout, and there's a new villain that comes in and using your villain as the shell corporation. And it ends up being, it starts as a parody and a satire, and ends up being kind of depending on the path you choose. And actually, even if you choose like evil or good paths, there's a fulfilling character arc that's there. And the more that I have gone down different story beats, the more developed I see all the different characters that are in there. Like some of the characters that just felt kind of one note the first time I played through it, but by the time that I've seen 2 or 3 different endings, there's like, if I squish all those together, and it gives me like, oh, they really developed this character, just not in the ending that I saw. And it's $15. It's $12 on sale to start with. At first, I really kind of balked at that. But then I thought, at first it was like a 10% off sale in the beginning. And so it was like $12 when I bought it, or 20% off. And then, but if I think about it in terms of, if I buy a paperback novel and I go see a movie, I've spent more than that. If I, and so in some ways, like, I had to have this wrestling with, it's not necessarily a game, and so I can't attach the same type of value that my cost analysis of how much I would want to spend on a game that does this. But I buy books without any hesitation. I go see movies, or I rent movies without much of a hesitation, and I really enjoyed the story and the multiple paths. Surprisingly so, to the fact that I found myself thinking about the characters outside of the game. So congratulations. It's a Silken Sail Entertainment is the company. The kind of head of it is also the writer and one of the voice actors. He's got some other writing experience. But I'm very curious to see what they do next, because they hit this and made me interested in something that I always thought visual novels were like, I don't know. I'm thinking of Steam visual novels and way more anime than I am comfortable or is in my wheelhouse. So throwing it in a comic book setting certainly gives me a hook that, that I'm comfortable with, or that I can identify with. So yeah, I'm surprised at it. How about that? I'm surprised myself.
Very cool. Always great to hear a co-host getting into something new, particularly if it's not just a new title, but a new kind of genre to immerse themselves in. I'm going to try and pound the bricks and kind of get us out of here at a clip. I have also been playing F1 2017 on the PlayStation 5. Again, similar experience to going back and playing something that is a PlayStation 4 era game. I don't even remember buying this on PlayStation 4. Interesting experience that I'm having is that I have long acclaimed that my preference is for the Xbox type controller. And I have been particularly enamored of the Xbox type controller used in racing games for the accuracy and the fidelity that I have in the trigger pull, which is normally where kind of the analog controls are for a racing game. I find that the PlayStation's particularly at its in its native mechanical design, those triggers to me are not as conducive to a racing game. But I have actually been really satisfied with the performance of the PlayStation 4 DualShock in playing F1 2017. Two other games that I've been getting into recently are Glay Lancer and Dungeon Encounters on the Nintendo Switch. I should just reduce that to Glay Lancer. I haven't had a chance to play Dungeon Encounters yet. Dungeon Encounters is a Square Enix game, so I'm interested in jumping on the Square Enix bandwagon, as some of us have been tonight, and kind of seeing what that is. I have played some Glay Lancer, so interesting, DBQ, to hear you mention about the unforgivingness of certain titles. This is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up along the lines of a Defender or R-Type, and so, yeah, at certain points you can have what seems like hundreds of objects on screen, and it is very unforgiving. So I've had a chance to toe dip into that, and I will be talking about that later. Next Picks Plays assignment is as follows. Doom Eternal continues to chug out new content heading into 2 years since its release. This week, id and Bethesda dropped Horde mode. Other modern games have explored this play type, such as Gears of War and others, but it has fallen a bit out of commonality. There are elements in the play mode that are stylistically similar to an endless runner. So we're going to take out any game mode that is kind of a whole movie in a single camera shot. So basically, some game that has a mode where basically there's no pauses and it never ends until you basically lose. And report back. Horde mode, endless runners, tower defense, pretty much any game mode that goes start to finish without any loading screens or true pauses. Anything else you can justify similar characteristics to are all fair. No one has signed up with a potential game that they're thinking about playing for this assignment yet. Any of you have any that you've thought of just as I was going through that?
I was just playing something that had a Horde mode equivalent, and now I can't think of it. But yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing about this is it's broad enough, like most of our assignments, that it gives us a chance to kind of either grab something that we're already in rotation with, or I'm trying to find something here for this that I haven't touched in a while that will bring me back into this.
Very cool.
I'll have to do a little digging, I think.
Very well. We will talk about it. See if there are any updates next week when we do our deep dive. We typically do a midpoint check-in to see if anybody has at least picked their game. So that'll be interesting. Next week is a deep dive episode with Towmaster99 as host. SwissGuard and DBQ will be co-hosts. So essentially, you're going to swap this seat out for me and bring in Towmaster99. Anything else you guys want to go over tonight?
No, lots to cover. Lots of games coming out. It's 'tis the season.
Yes. It's only going to get busier as we now are in the wild ride slipstream to the end of the year gaming superlative show. So on behalf of the E2KG Network and the co-hosts, DBqHams and SwissGuard, my name has been GameLogic. Thanks so much for joining in on this episode number 216 of the GX Show, the Gamer Experience Show, Part 2 for October 2021. Until next week, we will talk to you later. Until then, stay safe, take care of yourself, play the games that you like. I'm here to talk about the games that you love. We will talk at you again next week. Good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.